Hi, everyone. It's Monday morning. It is October 7th already. Believe it or not, we're 1 week into the fourth quarter of 2019. And we are here with our weekly episode of Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. As always, we are brought to you by Rogue Tulips, LLC, a company that provides 501c consulting services and association management company services to 501c organizations of all sizes and types. I'm Cecilia Sepp, one of your co-hosts, and I am also the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Agnes Coleman. Agnes, please say hello.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience, regardless of wherever you're operating from. My name is Agnes Coleman. I'm an author and a consultant with Rogue Tulips. Over to you, Cecilia.
Great. Thank you, Agnes. So today we are launching the first of a three-part series, which will not be consecutive. So you're going to have to watch every week to see if it's part 2 and 3. But we're doing a three-part certification series for 501c organizations. This is one of Agnes's areas of expertise. And it's actually how I met Agnes, because I recruited her to work at a healthcare association as director of certification. So today we're going to talk with Agnes about certification strategies for 501c organizations. So Agnes, what do you think is the first consideration for strategic development of a certification program?
Thanks, Cecilia. I'm going to address that question in a minute, but I also want to kind of touch base on the reasons why our 501c community could really look at this more broadly from a strategic perspective. As you and I know, working in the 501c community, the 501c are continually looking for new ways of generating revenues and creating a value-added a service to their membership. And certification definitely is one of those strategic approaches. And to your question, I think this becomes a strategic issue that the board of directors and the leadership of the organization really need to carefully look at and see whether this is a strategy that they want to embark on. Certification process or development, it's not a walk in the park. There's a lot of areas that the organization really needs to look into. There's time involved, there's money, and there's the legal ramification in the process as well. So again, it's one of those areas that the organization really need to really think through and see whether this is a space that they want to play in.
So let's say I'm a 501c organization that does not currently have a certification program. And certification programs tend to be for individuals. So if I'm an organization that wants to start a certification program, what's the first question I should answer?
I think the first question would be to really analyze the reason why you want to start a certification program. Looking at your membership and really identifying, is our membership ripe for this? Is there something that would add value to our membership? And if we're trying to create a source of revenue, what are the potential here for creating revenue? So these are at least the basic fundamental questions, because honestly, that's really the reasons why 501c want to do this. They either want to increase their revenue or want to see whether it's going to add value to their membership. So that's a good place to start with your stakeholders. And as soon as you are able to answer that question, then you can be able to begin the process of analysis to see whether this is how you're going to get there, analyzing it, whether there's the potential, what are the benefits, what are the advantages, and what are the disadvantages.
So, okay, so we've done all that. Let's say we've done all that. We've answered that question, and our members have said, yes, we would like to have a certification for our profession. And the board approves it and says, yes, let's go forward. Let's set aside the funds to do this. So what's the first thing you do to start a certification program?
The first thing that I would recommend is really designing the right certification program for your membership.
Mhm.
and bearing in mind the legal ramifications, looking at what are the areas that you want to certify your members. Is it a general certification that aligns them with the core practices of their business, or is it a certification that just aligns them to the core practices of the association? Once you've identified that, the type of certification, then you need to look at the structures that you need to put in place, to make this certification work. You need to pull together all the vendors that are going to help this process. You need to have conversations with them, share with them what your goals are, what you're trying to do as an organization, and really partner. It's a very collaborative process, partnering with those external stakeholders, the governing bodies that would govern that process, whether it's an internal certification or it's an external certification. You still need a governing body in this process, and then begin that process of partnering with the key organizations to make it happen.
And so when you say governing body, that's like the CAE Commission at ASAE, or what other kind of governing bodies might you have to work with?
You're looking at ISO, you're looking at, the one that comes to mind right now, ISO is a big one. You're looking at the big commission, the name kind of eludes me right now, but there are a lot of international governing bodies out there that really work with your, depending on the type of your organization, the focus of your organization, and then you can determine which one of those governing bodies you're going to align yourself with,
And
and how they would help you within this process.
And ISO is International Standards Organization, and
That's correct.
for people who don't know what ISO is, and then ANSI is the American version. It's the American National Standards Institute,
That's
and
correct.
so that's another that's a U.S. based group you can align yourself with, and they also partner with ISO. So
That's correct.
it's a great way to have standards that have been reviewed and approved and tested, not just locally but internationally, and it's a great way to do that. So Agnes, a lot of this stuff is strategic in that you have to build these relationships with your outside collaborators, and do a lot of planning in support of the mission. So what if somebody wanted to start their own commission, like the CAE Commission? What would go into that if you didn't align with an outside group?
Well, starting your own commission, really, one of the thought process that you need to put into this is to make sure that it's very independent.
Mhm.
What you don't want, I think actually that's the criteria. You and I talked about ethics a couple of weeks ago. You want to make sure that your commission is governed by the ethical principles. And it has to be neutral, it has to be independent.
Mhm.
And in being independent, it means that you have to look at your organization structure, your 501c structure, and attract people who work within the profession as well as outside the profession that can provide a fair and balanced viewpoint on how to successfully manage and run the certification program, that it becomes very credible. Because what you don't want, I mean, reputation is a very important thing within the certification industry. What you don't want is for your certification to be seen as not credible, as not reputable, because your governing commission or your governing body, it's not fair, it's not reflective of the industry, and it's not reflective of the industries that it's supposed to be serving, and it's not it's not in compliance with some of the bodies that we've talked about earlier on.
Now, do you have to connect with somebody like ISO, or can you just work with your own independent commission?
You can definitely work with your own independent commission, but I always say that, gathering feedback and intelligence from
Mhm.
ISO and ANSI, it's definitely, it will not hurt anything. It would only add credibility to what you do, because the key here is that gathering as much information and intelligence and doing it right is the key. And having this body give advice or share the best practices will definitely go a long way.
So our topic today is strategy. So far you've talked about you have to have a research strategy, then you have to have a partner strategy to work with the outside groups. And then you would have to have a strategy for implementation. So what would go into the strategy for implementation at that point?
The strategy for implementation is really looking at the various marketing and communication strategies, because once you've implemented it and you've put together the structures that go that's aligned with this, again, you have the commission, you have your exams, vendors sorted out, you have your all your internal and external stakeholders aligned with the process. Then you need to communicate this idea to your community. And communication requires, what is it that you're selling? What is it that you're trying to, the certification that you're trying to implement? What is the value that it brings to them? How much is it going to cost them to be a member? What kind of training are they going to have to get to be able to allow them to certify? And really just really looking at that communication process and pulling together all the nut bolts that they need to be informed on what the value would be for them. Because remember, if there's no value for them, they're not going to buy into it. So the organization really needs to do an analysis of what the membership value would look like and incorporate that into the marketing and communication strategies.
Well, so then we only have a few minutes left. So I want to ask kind of a practical question for people out in our audience like myself who may not be experienced certification managers like you. Do all certifications have to include an initial exam, or can it be experience-based?
It depends. That's where the difference between, certification and certificate comes into play.
Okay.
Certification really is generally awarded by an independent body, and they need to include experience, education, and passing an exam. So for instance, you have a CAE, it's a combination of your experience, it's a combination of passing an exam, and it's a combination of continuous professional development. I have a CMP, it's the same structure. A certificate program, it's a process to get it into a certification. So you could do a series of courses that would probably work you towards getting certified. So in answer to your question, I think that the certification program generally, as a rule, as a guiding principle, really does require that you have, continuing education and you passing an exams.
So you initially do have to have an exam. And I think that's an important thing to point out, because even though there's a big difference between certification and earning a certificate, you generally still have to take a quiz at the end of the certificate too. Some certificate programs are set up, if you go to all the courses, then they will give you the certificate of completion. But when I did the certificate for nonprofit accounting professionals, I had to do a quiz, and I had to pass the quiz or they wouldn't give me the certificate. And yes, I got a 96.3%. So yeah, no bragging there. But seriously, it's like, I think it's important because, especially this time of year, to talk about certifications, at least in the 501c community, I think it's on a lot of people's minds, because the first Friday in December is the exam date for the CAE exam. So they offer it twice a year, first week in May, first Friday in December. So a lot of people are thinking about this now, and there's a lot of talk about the exam, and there's a lot of pressure and stress for people getting ready for the exam. And so I think sometimes they wonder, why do I have to take this exam? And as what you said, there has to be that exam demonstrating that you understand what would go into having this. So we have just about a minute and a half left on our usual episode. So are there any other strategies that people need to keep in mind when it comes to certification? You've talked about planning, you've talked about implementation strategy, you talked about marketing strategy and partnership strategy. So are there any other strategies that go into it, or once you get it launched, you keep it maintained?
I think that's a very important one, and that's evaluation. Like anything else in life, if you can manage, if you can't measure, you can't manage. I think it's very important that we continue to review the process for improvement. Because once you've put in place a certification strategy, there's always going to be laws that changes, or guiding principles that changes, or guidelines that changes, and evaluating that process would allow you to be able to communicate those changes to your target audience and even your internal and external stakeholders as promptly as possible. I think that definitely it's a key part of that strategic process as well, evaluation.
And then certification should always support mission as well, correct?
Absolutely, Cecilia. That was well said, because again, if your mission, and that's why you remember when we started this conversation, we did talk about being a strategic issue. If it's not aligning with your mission, then don't go there, because no, it's true. It's because it's labor intensive, and it's also financially, it's huge financial investment.
Right.
The benefit far outweighs all the labor that goes into it, but make sure that it aligns with your mission. Don't just go into it blindfolded. Do your homework, follow all the strategic issues that we've talked about today.
Great. Well, that is a great overview of strategy for development and implementation. And as we mentioned at the beginning, there will be 2 other episodes about certification covering different topics. So watch every week to find out what those new topics are. That's our teaser. I want to thank Agnes for sharing all her knowledge today about strategies. And once again, we are supported by Rogue Tulips. We have a new name, but timeless experience. So check us out on the web at roguetulips.com. We're also a supporter of the 501c League, which is a virtual membership organization for everyone in the 501c community and the people who love them. So you can check out the league at the 501cleague.net. They are currently offering an ethics program tomorrow. If you want to sign up, today's October 7th, you can sign up till the end of today. They're also offering it once in November and once in December, and that is also on the website if you want to check that out. So I want to thank my co-host again, Agnes, for joining me today and sharing her knowledge on certification. And we will be back next Monday with another fascinating topic for the 501c community. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Hi, Agnes.